Stories. Marcus Carlson's here. Marcus, let's go straight to that corporate story of the day here in France. Tell us more about it.
Yes, indeed. It is the story of the day when it comes to corporate news. French media giant Vivendi is entering exclusive talks to sell its telecoms unit SFR to the cable operator Numericable. That announcement is seen as a surprise. Expectations had been building in the past couple of days that Vivendi would pick a rival bid from the conglomerate Bouygues instead. Experts say it means that competition in the French telecoms market will remain fierce. Delano de Souza has more.
Vivendi is hanging up the phone on Bouygues. SFR's parent company has chosen Numericable as the preferred suitor for its telecom unit. Numericable's cash offer of nearly 12 billion euros was higher than that of Bouygues. Vivendi's board also says that France's competition watchdog is likely to clear a tie-up with Numericable faster. Had Bouygues won, the number of operators would have been reduced to 3. It will now remain at 4, and it sets the scene for tough competition.
Les économies nécessaires que devront faire les opérateurs.
The necessary savings which operators must make will continue if the lowering of prices different for each operator is maintained. There's a strong chance that the lowering of prices will continue.
Ce que je disais avant va se poursuivre.
Competition in the French mobile market was stepped up after the entrance of low-cost operator Free Mobile. Their entrance in 2012 saw prices drop to record lows. It was around then that SFR stopped being a cash generator for Vivendi. The government says it would have liked to see the number of operators decrease.
We're in favour of returning to 3 cell phone operators because we believe it won't be a problem for customers and it will stabilise a sector in which we have to invest.
If it is ultimately successful in its bid, Numericable stands to gain access to SFR's large retail network. The new entity will be the second largest mobile operator in France. For Vivendi, selling off SFR is an attempt to focus more on its media business. The company will now enter into 3 weeks of exclusive talks with Numericable's parent company, Altice.
Okay, let me just show you how this story played out in the stock markets here in France on Friday. Numericable shares closed more than 12% higher, and Altice was up more than 7% at the close. Vivendi shares, they were pretty stable. Not much of a reaction there when it comes to the shares of the media giant. Bouygues, however, lost steam and was down almost 3% at the close as it lost the bid for SFR. Now, there are warnings that Russia's economy will pay the price as the Kremlin faces off with the West over Ukraine. American bank Goldman Sachs has lowered its forecast for Russian growth this year. The bank says the Russian economy will take a hit because of an outflow of capital sparked by the crisis. Goldman Sachs says $45 billion have left Russia this year alone as investors are being turned off the country. The bank now predicts a 1% expansion in the Russian economy. The previous forecast was for a 3% expansion this year. Now, the Moscow stock market tumbled earlier on Friday and hit its lowest level since October 2009. It recouped some of those losses before the close, but it still ended down around 1% this session. If we take a look at the performance of the MY6, that is the main stock market index in Moscow since the start of the year, you really see this story playing out as well. Back in March, or at the start of March, we saw the MY6 taking a real tumble as the Russian parliament gave President Putin the permission to send troops into Ukraine. We're going to take a look at the wider stock markets now. We saw a real sell-off in the United States and in Europe yesterday on concerns about Ukraine and also on concerns about Chinese growth coming down. This hour, we're seeing the American markets trading below the flat line for another session. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is currently down by around about 0.2%. Investors, they seem to be staying on the sidelines ahead of that referendum in Crimea over the weekend, in which residents of Crimea will say whether or not they want to belong to Moscow as opposed to Kiev. Now, in Europe earlier, we saw a mixed picture when it comes to the main indices. Worries over the Ukraine also weighed on stocks this side of the Atlantic. The DAX was in positive territory at the end of the trading day, but that followed a sharp drop on Thursday, so I suppose it's only natural to see a little bit of a reaction this Friday. Let's talk you through a few other stories that we're following for you. Chinese internet retailer Alibaba is preparing one of history's biggest share listings. The Financial Times is reporting the company is planning to raise at least $50 $15 billion. It may surpass Facebook's initial public offering, which raised $16 billion back in 2012. The FT also says Alibaba is likely to snub Hong Kong and list in New York instead. And if we stick with Hong Kong, regulators in the city are accusing the Swiss banking giant UBS of rigging its benchmark interest rate. It follows a year-long investigation by the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, the city's de facto central bank. UBS has already been fined $1.5 billion by US, UK and Swiss regulators for manipulating interest rates. And McDonald's is facing lawsuits in 3 different American states over workers' salaries. The suits in California, Michigan, and New York claim the fast food chain and some of its franchises had stolen wages. McDonald's stands accused of violating minimum wage and overtime regulations and forcing employees to work off the clock. The company says it's investigating the claims, adding that it's committed to the well-being of staff. Okay, that is the business news for now. I'll be back again in right about an hour's time with more headlines. For now, though, back to you, Tom.
Did you have to show me those hamburgers? They're making me hungry, Marcus. Thank you very much for that business update. It's time for a check of the top sports news. First up,